Waiting, letting everybody get in. Hello, everyone.
Let's move that. Can I do that?
Yeah. Oh, 8 participants, 9 participants.
11 people are just still getting
It
in.
is a little bit like a bingo rally.
Oh, we should have brought our bingo cards.
Or dabber. Isn't that what it is?
Dauber.
Dauber.
Dauber?
Somebody can let us know. Is it dabber or dauber for
Yeah,
bingo?
pop it in the chat down there. Bingo dabber, bingo
All right.
dauber.
Give us the bingo lingo.
Okay. I'm gonna start us off.
You haven't lived until you
coming in.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Sure.
We have noticed that rural internet, there's a little bit of a delay, so apologies to anyone tuning in if we seem to be talking over each other. We're going to do our best to anticipate the delay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining the District of Muskoka Public Libraries for another Author Talk. Tonight, we are thrilled to be having a conversation with local HarperCollins authors Dale Curd and Kimberly Alexander. I'm Lindsay, part of the staff at Muskoka Lakes Public Library, as well as Huntsville Public Library. If you'd like to let us know where you're tuning in from, you can pop it into the chat box below. If you're unfamiliar with that, it should be down at the bottom of your screen. It says chat, not the Q&A option, just the chat one. Tell us where you're watching from tonight. We are recording tonight's talk so that it may be linked to our library's websites and enjoyed by those who couldn't make it tonight. We did experience a power outage earlier, and we did have a moment of wondering what the heck we would do if it wasn't back on tonight. So if you know people who are still out, then let them know they'll be able to catch up after we put it on our websites. We do have our other author talks available for watching anytime if you're interested, including last month's chat with Linwood Barclay. And next month, we are hosting the adult fiction author Pam Jenoff, which is back at our regular time of 7 p.m. So mark your calendars for August 18th. Watch your library's social media accounts for more information about upcoming events and activities. And you can also sign up to receive emailed newsletters so that you never miss a post. So before we get started, there's a few housekeeping things to go through. We will have about an hour with our authors with a bit of time near the end to ask your own questions in case I haven't thought of the ones you're dying for them to answer. If you have a question for Dale or Kim, please type it into the Q&A, which again is at the bottom of your screen. And they may answer it during their talk, but we encourage you to ask the questions as you think of them. Don't worry about waiting to the end to type it in. If you would like to purchase a copy of their book, Living Lightly, this beautiful book right here, it brings happiness and calm to your everyday, there is still time. Email or call your library just like you did to sign up for tonight and let them know you'd like to be added to the purchase order that's being sent out late tomorrow. Every book comes with a signed book plate, and if you already own a copy of Living Lightly, you can request just the signed book plate to add it in. So just let us know by tomorrow afternoon. Now, very important, we would like to do our land acknowledgement. This is a somber time in Canada, and I will do my best to do it justice and not just do it to check it off tonight's agenda. So the Muskoka Lakes Public Library acknowledges that these land and waters are the traditional homeland of the Ojibwe Nation and the Huron-Wendat Nation, and now includes communities from the Mohawk Nation and the Métis Nation of Ontario. We acknowledge their stewardship throughout the ages. As I think you all know, joining us tonight are local authors Dale Curd and Kimberly Alexander. Dale Curd is a mental health professional, the host of CBC TV's Hello Goodbye, and a co-host of Life Story Project on the Oprah Winfrey Network. Kimberly Alexander is a therapist with an online practice. Dale and Kim founded the Child Therapy List and the Men's List to encourage and help people find therapy services and end mental health stigma. Milford Bay, Muskoka is home for Dale and Kim, where they live on a small farm. Their book, Living Lightly, came out in early 2020, Living Lightly offers a year's worth of opportunities to commune in the deepest and most beautiful sense of the word with yourself and your life. Featuring timeless wisdom, inspiring quotes, and simple practical strategies to help you boost your happiness, Living Lightly invites you to explore how your mind works, and be reminded that you are much, much stronger than you realize. Living Lightly is a great way to start or end your day. Good evening, Dale and Kim, and thank you both so much for being here tonight, and congratulations on Living Lightly. Your book came out in the world in early 2020, which seems like a lifetime ago, but I'm sure that you were working on it for quite a while before that. What was the inspiration behind what ultimately became Living Lightly?
You want me to take this one? All right. Thanks, Lindsay, and thank you to the Muskoka Lakes District Library Association, and thank you for HarperCollins for putting this on. It's great to see the people chime in from where they're from. So a big hello to all of you. It's a great question, and the inspiration for Living Lightly really started with HarperCollins. It was a conversation with HarperCollins that we had back in late 2017, or early 2018, where they had this idea of a daily journal. And they were having conversations with different authors about whether they'd be interested in taking that on. And for me, I was really interested in the idea of writing every single day, because it's something that I do in terms of my own motivation and my own inspiration. I always look for something to sort of start my day with. So I was really excited about the idea of writing this kind of a book, which features something to think about or consider or chew on, if you will, every single day of the year. And the writing process really for us began in 2018. We delivered the finished book, I think, late 2018, 2019, I think. And then it came out in December of 2019.
9 months later.
9 months
Almost
later.
like a baby.
Exactly. And so that was really the inspiration. It was this conversation about, and no idea, obviously, that COVID was even in the horizon. But this idea that there was a need, perhaps, for a book that was like a gentle daily conversation, between two friends, or a friend and a colleague, like somebody that you're really close with, where you get to share a little bit of information, you get maybe some inspiration, and you get a nugget to think about, and ultimately you get to think about maybe who you are. Like there's something in each page and each writing where you get to go, I wonder how that connects to me. You get to learn more about yourself.
And I would add to that, if I may.
Please.
Thanks, Lindsay. There's a bit of a delay, so we'll work with that. Moving to Muskoka, living with, rocks and trees and water and animals, we were definitely already writing. But just to say that this was a conversation really that you began with HarperCollins on your own as a television host, and being invited to write.
Mm-hmm.
And I was writing anyway as well, because we were going through a lot coming from the beaches in Toronto and making that adjustment. And I just want to acknowledge you, to be life partners, and to have Dale invite me in as his writing partner was such a gift. Really unexpected and unplanned initially, and then for HarperCollins to go along and say absolutely. Thanks to HarperCollins as well for really going with it and giving us the freedom to create the book together in a, I would say, spontaneous way. But that's been quite a gift for us to be able to be writing partners. And we can talk a little bit about that if you're interested later, but wanted to say that.
Thank you.
That's really neat. And I found the book, although you say it was inspired from the idea of journaling something every day, I did find it very unique in its format. And for anyone who hasn't got their hands on the book yet, we will have Dale and Kim be reading an entry each tonight, so you'll get a bit of a feel for the variety. They're very unique entries. But it doesn't strike me as a journaling book per se. And do you feel that you wrote it as you did because there wasn't something like that on the market already, or was it more of an organic evolution as you saw each person's finished written pieces and work to put them together? It's like it's not what I would expect if someone handed it to me and said this is a journaling book.
Mhm. You're absolutely right. So I think a traditional journaling book is perhaps more prescriptive with things to do and with meditations perhaps, or with queries, that kind of thing. So you're absolutely right. It's not a traditional motivational journal in that sense. Our inspiration and a little insight into, or a little background into how we wrote the book first. We spent about 4 to 6 hours a day independently writing entries, and we really didn't discuss with each other what the other was writing. We didn't really talk. We might talk about sort of a topic in very broad terms, but not what was our take on that topic going to be, or what was the insight that we wanted to surface, or an awareness that we wanted to surface out of that topic. We really didn't discover what the other person had written until we were well into the editing process. And there was 2 reasons for that. It was really important to me that the reader is not biased when they read the entries about whether a man wrote this or whether a woman wrote this. I really wanted to have there be a blurring about and strip away any kind of inherent, well, men don't write about these things or women don't write about these things in terms of what we write about. So it was a real discovery process in the editing when that was the first time that we got to really I got to look at what Kim had written, and she got to look at what I had written. And that sparked a lot more conversation about the book. I'm a big lover of the Vinyl Cafe on CBC. I'm a huge lover of small town conversations that take place in like grocery stores and on the sidewalks and in public places where people just stop and they chat and they catch up. Because you don't get that in the city. You really don't get that level of conversation. You don't get that sharing of ideas, and you don't get those wisdoms that can come in just a really simple phrase. So I was really taken with that, and I wanted the book, for my own writing, I wanted each piece to be like a coffee conversation with a good friend. That was where I started every writing, was if I was to sit down with a good friend or somebody I've met up here and we were to talk, eventually we would end up talking about something that I wrote about. And there'd be a takeaway that I would get from that. So that was kind of my inspiration.
Well, and it's beautiful. I would say to Lindsay that absolutely, that you picked up that it is more organic or fluid than prescriptive, like a journal is bang on. Absolutely. So Dale's described a little bit and what it was like for us. And certainly, personally writing, what we had agreed to set out as a goal every single day is that whatever it was that we had chosen to write about, that we would be complete only when we had reached a place of hope for ourselves. Because the topics range from, it isn't all roses. It is real life. It is real feelings. It is difficulty. It is beauty. It's life, right? As real as it comes, and very personal. But again, I think that that feeling of it being organic and somewhat unique is that we wrote through to hope. Not necessarily resolution, not necessarily an answer, but to a place where it felt like there was light at the end of the tunnel on that particular topic. So I would add that.
Wow, that's beautiful. Did you find by not reading each other's entries until the editing phase that you were really curious about what the other person was doing? Did you find that something that you were conscious of and consciously avoiding seeking out each day? And are you writing? I'm really curious. You obviously live together. Are you writing in nearby spaces? What does it feel like in your house if you're both writing but not talking about what you're writing for months?
Well, you're absolutely right. All of that is true. And so like our own behavior as we were writing each day was exactly as you described. So Kim had a favorite spot by a window in the Muskoka room. I sat at the dining room table, or I would go upstairs. We'd start the day with a coffee and a little bit of a chit chat, and then it'd be okay. I'm going to go off and write. And there was never well, what are you writing about today? It was just this, usually by the end of that sort of cycle of the 4 hours or 6 hours, there'd be this coming together. And it was like, well, how did that go for you? And then we might have a little bit, well, it was a tough one, or it was an easy one, or I feel really good about what I wrote, but we never talked about it. We never talked about the topics per se. And so we had in the framework of the book, there were different doorways that we kind of wrote through. And so maybe this is a good place to sort of describe how we see living lightly. Living lightly for us is an opportunity to get to know yourself through some doorways that life gives us. So our bodies, getting to know ourselves through getting to know our bodies, nature, work, friendships, love. Did I forget one?
Money,
a relationship to money. So we looked at life through different doorways. And so our only real mission each day was to make sure as individual writers that we picked a different door every day.
Right.
But it wasn't until the editing process that we discovered that some of what we had written, let's take nature as an example, some of what we had written about were our own individual discoveries about nature, but that there was never a repeat. If anything, there was just taking the topic a bit deeper or taking the topic in a different direction, which was in a way really wonderful, that there were no repeats in terms of what we wrote about, despite going through very similar doorways.
And the doorways you speak of, were those established ahead of time? Is that something the two of you sort of laid out as a framework in advance, but then didn't talk details?
We did, absolutely, right? Like
you developed them. You developed it as a framework initially.
I think develop is a very kind way of saying I'm a bit of a control freak. And when I looked at the task of writing 365 days worth of material, I thought to myself, well, I don't know about you, but that would be like getting lost at sea. I could get lost in that very easily. So I needed, just to calm my mind down, I needed a structure that I could somehow follow that allowed me to write something every single day. So I wasn't just sitting at the table going, oh my gosh, what am I going to write about today? I could pick a doorway and go, oh, I could write about that, or I could find something there. And it was really just to make sure that I didn't get lost. It was like, if you will, like compass points or compass directions. It just gave me somewhere to point myself on a given day.
One of the things I noticed in writing, and I'd be really interested if there is anybody who's gone through some of the book and wants to share, but is that I was also hoping that the experience of reading it would be similar, in that I was starting to find that regardless of the door, that I was traveling through layers of myself. And so whether I was talking about or thinking about or writing about family or love or anger or rocks, I was still traveling through a known or felt sense of myself. And that for me is what we're hoping readers, like that's the companionship. That's the getting to know parts of myself, regardless of the doorway that I might have forgotten or not even known. And that was really true. I know personally, I don't know, was that true for you as well?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I mean, we envisioned the book like a friendship that's formed between us and the reader, and it's a year long. So by the end of that year, I, as the writer, have discovered a lot about myself, and hopefully the reader has discovered a lot about themselves, because that's the beauty of a relationship. I learn about myself as well as I learn about the other person by being in relationship. It's that's where all the knowledge is. That's where all the learning is.
I would say, as a reader of your book, that definitely happened. And I found it so interesting in talking to you guys that you don't, and you've mentioned it already tonight, that you don't attribute any specific entry to either of you. You don't want it to be that Dale wrote this one, Kim wrote that one. And yet still, as the reader, I felt anyway, personally, that I was developing a relationship with the two of you, somewhat nebulous, because I always wondered who it was, but it also at the same time didn't even really matter, if that makes sense. It was definitely a lovely companion. But on that note, you have children. Have they read it? And do they, I mean, they're mentioned in some of the entries, and do they like seeing themselves talked about on the page, or can they extrapolate out from that and it becomes their own experience separate from your experience of them? Did it create any issues, including your family specifics in your book?
Right.
Well, you take that one.
Both of our kids are remarkably quiet about the book. There is actually, and I apologize, I can't pull the author right from memory, but there actually is a book out there about how your family will never read the book you've written. And I don't know, maybe as a follow-up, we can provide who that lovely piece is by. So I would say that both of our kids, excuse me, and there's 10 years difference. They're 10 years apart, and yet they've responded very similarly. They're both really insightful, really iceberg kinds of individuals where there's a lot of depth, a lot going on under the surface of the water, and that privacy. So they've actually, I know for me what's been true is they've asked to, I get the sense, talk about this another day, another time. They see us as being really, I think, daring in the sharing, that like quite out there in terms of how personal we've included in terms of details and feelings and hurts and things that, maybe some people don't want to talk about. And I think that's the nature of who we are, but also what we do for a living. And our children do not share that right now. No. So, stay tuned on that, Lindsay. But I'll come back to you in 10 years and let you know. But right now, they are happy that their friends and their teachers and their people in their network know about the book or have read the book, and they're happy to talk about that, but they're not necessarily ready to go into the material themselves.
That's very fair.
You want to add to that at all? Is that true for you?
I think you nailed it. Okay. I think there's a sense of that they're very proud of us for the commitment of writing a book, and we dedicated the book to both of them. And I think they understand that this for us is a gift to them as much as it was a gift to the reader. That it was really a gift to them in a very, maybe not so gentle way. I was thinking it would be gentle, but maybe it's not so gentle way of letting them understand who their parents are.
Yeah.
It might be a little freaky for them.
I look forward to the update there, Kim, in years to come.
I will keep you posted.
Okay. Yeah. Would now be an okay time for you, Kim, to read your chosen entry, which explores thankfulness?
Sure, absolutely.
Wondering if any of our participants tonight haven't had the chance yet, so it'll give them a chance just to know a little bit more about what we're talking about as far as how deep they go what you talk about.
Yes, I would be happy to. And again, remembering that what we're reading isn't because it came from us individually. This is really from both of us. And the way this is structured is yeah, one a day. So I won't even, well, I'll just get right into it. I think I need my glasses. Yeah. Take a moment for thanks. It doesn't matter where we are or how we're feeling. It doesn't matter if we're at our best, or even if gratitude is true in this moment. We know we're grateful, so let's take a moment now. Let's take a deeper breath and close our eyes. Thank you. Thank you for life at this time. Thank you for the good in my life. Thank you for the opportunity to experience love. Thank you for the good that is coming. Add to these thanks. Add your pets, your favorite people, favorite foods, your own beliefs, until you're smiling and feel tingly. That's how we know when we are connected to life.
Nicely done.
I was going to cry there for a second. I felt that. Thank you.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Go ahead, Dale.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. I did the thing I said I wouldn't do, was just to talk over you. I noticed we have a question in the Q&A.
We do,
And my
that's-
brain is like, I want to know what the question
It
is.
might be Jacqueline.
No.
It was Jacqueline. It was
Oh.
our Collins rep showing me what a question in the Q&A looks like. So it's a good time to remind everyone, though, if they
There
have
we go.
questions, to type it down in the Q&A, and it does show up for us, and then we get anxious and wonder what the questions are.
Right, there we go. Okay.
So
Nicely
you
done.
talked about your writing process, and
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what the publication process was like. So you're obviously represented by HarperCollins. Does that mean that you hand over your finished, edited 365 entries and you're done? Or Kim, your facial expression is telling me that was not the case.
Was there more there? It
More.
sounded like you were
No,
going to say more.
What was the publication side of things like? You pour your heart and soul and your many months and hours and time and get your hope every day, and then the next step, does it continue to feel hopeful? What was it like?
Well, you know, as newbie authors, we had very little understanding of the publishing process, and only and again, the internet is not your friend in this regard. What we could glean from the internet about what other authors have gone through in terms of publishing, and that editing is perhaps some of the most difficult time that you spend as an author, because in some senses your work as a writer is being critiqued, but it's also you're getting feedback on things like style, obviously, and did you mean to communicate this idea, or were you really trying to communicate this other idea? And you know, as an author, what I learned was to understand. I had to come to an understanding very quickly that in editing, it's about clarity. So there's a team of people whose job it is to make the message that I've put my heart and soul into, to make it as clear as possible. And that was really for HarperCollins, on HarperCollins' sake, we worked with was it Noelle, right? Noelle Zinger, that she was extremely generous and extremely gentle, I think, in editing the book. Like, the book was, as you say, 365 entries. The average length of an entry was somewhere between 500 to 1,000 words. It's a lot of words. And I think there was a remarkable, I would say that the editing comments that we got back, both of us were like, really, that's it? That's all there is, really? You know, really gentle
honoring
and honoring, yeah.
to have a comment and not a change, but a suggestion or a real, you've said this, like a real want, a desire to understand. Did you mean this? Because I noticed, you know, in an earlier entry, when you use that same word, it meant, you know, they were really paying attention and treating our words with such care. I felt like really well appreciated it through the process. And then of course there was the design of what the book looked like, the cover and the pages. And again, I think stylistically as people, we try and be fairly unattached, even though we are sometimes, we tend to put our heart and give it our all and then move to the next piece. And so the book cover, and I don't know, Lindsay, if you're able to maybe hold it up and just hold it for a second, because with the delay, it was so quick the first time. But to go from,
I'm gonna have to
Oh,
talk
that's
over you
beautiful.
to focus on me just for a second. So this, yes, this is the beautiful book, which you can get at your local libraries and order yourself a copy.
Yes, you can.
that's right. Thank you. But just to say that to take words and language that we've written and to put color and a lotus flower and design and beautiful texture of paper was, again, just an amazing experience for us. So oftentimes I think, you know, we enjoy the book on a table because of what it looks like. And then to pick up a book that size and have it be physically so light as a tactile experience for people who are, you know, for me, like the feel of things is really important. That was so consistent with what we were trying to do. I was delighted.
So I have to say, like, I can only speak for myself, but as part of the writing team, the process of publishing the Living Lightly was really smooth, and it felt very honoring to the work and to the words that we put out. And what was really great was that sometimes in the comments that we would get back, in the edits that we would get back, we would get an editorial kind of self-learning or self-admission. The editor would go, yeah, me too. Or, wow, I never knew that. I'm going to have to think about that. And that for us was like, those are like Scooby snacks. We were like, oh, wow, that's great. It's like somebody gets it. It's like our first reader, reader experience, which was really neat to have that.
That must have been really satisfying. We do have a question about your book specifically. Cheryl wants to know how many pages it is.
Okay, Cheryl.
That's a good question.
Let's go.
That would be the last.
So the last entry, Cheryl, is December 31st, and that takes us to 418 pages. And then there's a little acknowledgement at the back, 419. But 418 pages. That's a great question. I can tell you, here's what I can say, Cheryl. If you're going to write a book, do not write it on an iPad. It is a huge task to do that. If I was to do one thing over again, I would say do not write a book on an iPad.
I would do it on my iPad again. I like it. But it is interesting. One thing we weren't, well, I'll speak for myself. So I wasn't expecting in editing, but then also just when the book first came out and we saw how thick it was and how light it was, and knowing the contents, is that some people didn't want to start from page 1. And it opened up this whole possibility, of course, because it is by calendar year, but people started just naturally saying, well, you know, my sister's birthday is coming up. I'm going to read that day for her, or people are opening it up, just opening it up, and whatever page I land on is that's what I'm going to go with for that day. And then of course there are people who read the whole thing in, you know, a week's time. I don't know how they did that. They must have been so loaded. Some of our in our reviewer group did that in short order, which is impressive. But that was another element, I think, of how lengthy the book is, but it is different in that it isn't a beginning, middle, and end. You can really take as much time as you want and then go back to it over and over again. It's really intended to be a companion that hopefully people will have on their shelves, we hope forever, but an evergreen kind of a read.
Yeah, I definitely found that it the entries themselves resonated on their own, but it came together beautifully and cohesively despite each entry being so unique. So that's a question I guess I have, is how did you weave it so wonderfully? Was that how you submitted it for publishing, or was that feedback in the editing phase? Because they stand alone. And I wouldn't necessarily say that an entry in July is really summery in feel, although some of them you kind of get a sense of a season. But how did each day get to be that day?
Well, I got to tell you, I have no idea, because it's a great observation, because there was no thought about that in terms of the structure or the writing. So that was the beauty of the organic nature of the book. And when it came to the editing, there were no recommendations about, well, let's take this day that you wrote in July and let's move it to February. There were no comments, no changes in that regard. They literally worked with every single day as we had laid it out. And I feel the same way that you do, Lindsay. Like when I've as I was reading the book, and I go back to it every so often just to pick up on a day, I find the same thing, and it blows my mind, because it seems like it's by design, but I can tell you that it was actually quite organic.
Well, I think that
we didn't have dates.
Authors. Sorry, Kim?
That's okay. I was just going to say we didn't have dates assigned to the daily writing. It was submitted as one single post or one single piece of writing without a date attached. And I think also we were really sensitive to people around the world. And again, just like with the bias of what was it, a man who wrote it or a female point of view, we also didn't want to be so surface that there's snow in December or gifts at a certain time of year. Really just opening up and peeling away, like kind of stepping outside of that box of the calendar. And so in the editing, I know that they moved some things, in and around from the initial order of the submission, but it was more from spacing out the topics, making sure that the topics were balanced. And I really liked that we were treating people as part of a world as opposed to North America or Muskoka or seasonality or, holiday schedules, back to school. We really tried to be free from all of that as much as we could. I think I had clipped you. You were going to say something, I think.
I was just going to say, you're obviously very natural authors, that you had such great feedback from the editing and the order of things. And I've spoken to other authors, and I don't think that's always the case. So well done. I look forward to what comes next.
So do we.
How did you choose your title? And this is going to be a strange question, but I'm genuinely curious. How did you choose whose name came first?
Oh, that's both great questions.
Now we're getting into the juicy questions.
So Living Lightly came as a title suggestion from HarperCollins, and it was one of a few, but it was the one that we kept on coming back to as we were writing. And I say that because there's a lot that's in the book that is about lightness and being light. especially given what we've gone through in the last 18 months, and finding lightness despite that. But there's also a lot that's in the book that isn't about lightness. That we really embrace the heaviness and the darkness of life as well. And so we kept coming back to living lightly, as that was almost like an ethos for the two of us. A way to be was to live lightly. And then between Harper and ourselves, we really wrestled to bring happiness and calm to your everyday, because as mental health professionals, Kim and I have a view on happiness that is sort of counter popular culture. For us, we had our original subtitle was bring contentment and calm to your everyday, because contentment is not fleeting and it's not dependent on circumstances. Contentment is really a personal, a place you arrive at personally. But that's what it was something we ceded to Harper, because they said, not many people are going to understand contentment the way you guys get contentment. Most people are going to understand it as happiness. So we went, oh, okay, well, we'll cede that one to you. Yeah, we'll cede that to you. And then in terms of the name, I don't think it was much of a conversation.
I don't remember a conversation.
Yeah, I don't remember one at all either. And it didn't pop up. I mean, it's somewhat alphabetical. I kind of looked at it in my logical mind, went somewhat alphabetical, but not. Because,
really not.
I don't know, but really not.
But really not. I will say that I thought it was really beautiful the way it worked out, that Dale Kurd and Kimberly Alexander, the short and the long, again, just visually, I think is beautiful in the flow. And there was something for me personally about Kimberly to Kim, and what would that be like, and having our names be side by side sometimes, because we're married, and so I'm known up here as Kim Kurd. So there was really something about stepping out and keeping my family name, because I'm really proud of being, partly French Canadian, and my heritage in the prairies. Like, I really love that part. I wasn't ready to totally let go. So I loved the idea of being able to have both names. Personally, that was in addition, not something we really spent a lot of time on, thankfully. It was decided quite easily, right?
So
that was a good question.
The title Living Lightly, just to clarify, did you have that in advance to your writing, or that came out of once HarperCollins had seen what you had written?
It was in advance. So there were a few titles that were floated out for this idea of a daily affirmation, or a daily journal, or a daily motivation book. There were a couple of titles that were floated out as possibilities, and we had them up, and we just kept coming back to this one.
Right. Well, reading through them all, it would be impossible to not notice your love for libraries. Public libraries is a common theme throughout, and it was a joy to read. How have libraries played a role in your lives and in the lives of your family members, in the specific ways you wrote about, or in other ways now that the world is a bit of a different place and libraries have had to pivot, as we all know? We're doing things like this. Do either of you want to speak to public libraries in your lives? I can first, and do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So I came to Canada in 1966 from England with my parents. And one of the first places we lived was here in Muskoka. And then we went a little further south to Orillia. And one of my mom's first jobs was at the Orillia Library as the film librarian. And so some of my earliest memories of as a child were the Saturday morning movie programs and the Saturday morning story programs at the library. And I can vividly remember laying on the floor with a book in my hands and other kids, and that was almost a high point of the week, was getting to go to the library. And I've never lost that love of libraries. When I was in university, I loved the library that was at York. I used to go down to the Robarts Library and study there at U of T as well, because I lived relatively close to there. And for me, especially in Muskoka, and I have very strong views about where Muskoka is at right now, vis-a-vis development and all of that. Libraries for me are the cultural hub of our communities. And it's not just the collection, it's the opportunity to meet, to talk, to socialize, to connect. Like some of the most amazing experiences that we've had in Muskoka as newbies have been connected through the library. Watching our daughter sing in the choir that was put together by Kathy, Kim's participation on the board here. I can remember as a kid watching the bats fly out of the chimney in the Bracebridge Library, and that being a thing that people would go to the main street and watch the bats come out of the tower. Like, so libraries for me are part of the fabric of it's where the knowledge of a community is held. So it's super important to me. They're an integral part of, for me, of being a reader and being a lifetime learner.
I would very only add, except I would say I don't have as a childhood connection necessarily to the library piece, but definitely to reading and the love of books that we brought to our children. And so the four of us reading. But what I was going to echo is absolutely when we moved here, the building we're in tonight, that I'm so excited because we've been so long since I've been in this building. So I was delighted to be here. This place was our first community connection. Lindsay, Kathy, Lorna, Nancy were our first friends. We brought our daughter here not knowing anybody, and she just was so at home, not only in the reading, but in the art, and in it is a peer, there's no hierarchy in the library. It is a connection of like minds for the love of learning, for the love of creating, sharing, discussing, and not only books, but media and art. And it really was, it began as a bit of a tether. I won't say an anchor, because we're in our 6th year living in Muskoka. And so I think we have decades before we would be considered from Muskoka.
Maybe not in this generation.
Right, maybe not in this generation. I think our younger child might have a shot at being considered local because she was 7 when we got here. But we are surrounded by people with rich history and legacies inside of the library and around, people who we really care for quite deeply, whose names are on street signs, or who, have relatives and stories, and their presence is everywhere. It is such a special, it's more than a hub. It is such a fundamental part of our day-to-day life. We're 7 minutes away and it is part of our day-to-day living, I would say. Absolutely. So we could talk for a long time about how much we love the library and love it here, but so to have people, we're all connected tonight via Muskoka and libraries. There's just really nothing better than that, except for maybe if we had snacks and we were sitting together. That would be the only way to top this off. Now you got me going, Lindsay. I could talk all night.
I have a deep love of libraries as well, and right back to childhood, not the Saturday morning movies, Dale, but it brought back a lot of memories of the Port Carling Library when it was in the same location you're currently sitting in, but in a much smaller scale. And libraries are just so important to communities. At least I think all of us attending tonight would agree. And so that's my next question is, throughout the last year and a half, we haven't been able to offer that to the community as a library system in Muskoka, any of the district libraries. We've all opened at different times and then shut our doors again. And for you as an avid library family, how have you managed, not just from a lack of access to the library in a traditional way, but as a family through the pandemic? I mean, I would say that you probably have a step up from the rest of us, coming from such a solid core of awareness and your skills with therapy and whatnot. But I'm sure that you've also had your struggles. And so can you tell us a little bit about your last year and a half?
Well, it sounded like that was a bit of a two-part question. And so I want to acknowledge the library in the first part of your question, because I would say that the library met us throughout the pandemic. So and quite simply, but I would say profoundly, by sending the emails out saying, okay, we're not, people can't come in, but we're going to be putting boxes and you can order books. And every email that came to Kim or to Molly, we jumped on it and did what we could to participate in, because it's we do read a lot, and this is a great collection here, and we all have our own things that we like to read, and so having the library meet us by making these things that we like to read available to us in a way that was safe, in ways that respected the guidelines, that was a big part. I would say it was a big string that got us through the last year and a half. But I'll be frank, and I don't know how other people in Muskoka feel, but we live off a side road, and it's a fairly busy side road, but a side road nonetheless. And we have a big long driveway, and it's a rare thing that somebody comes down the driveway. Without COVID, it would be a rare thing for somebody to come down the driveway. So the only things that I noticed with COVID was either the delay in terms of being able to go into store and waiting in a line, or access to certain things that I had become accustomed to. Otherwise, I thought, and I'll say this because I can't speak for the other communities, but I think the grocery store in Port Carling, the library, I think really kept the community going in a very level-headed way. And just helped a lot of people kind of get through it by just being normal. And by normal, I mean just being really kind of level-headed and sort of commonsensical about things. So when people were panicking and racing up here to take all the toilet paper and the paper towels and all of that, and I noticed the people in the grocery were just, well, this is going to happen. I guess we'll have to borrow toilet paper from somebody. Like, it just wasn't a big deal. There didn't seem to be a lot of fretting. And I would say that's been true for the year and a half. Like last summer, people were distanced, but they were at the beach and they were still going swimming. So were we impacted? Sure we were, but not drastically. And I know that our experience is not everyone's experience of COVID, for sure. But I feel blessed that we had a community that was pretty level-headed.
And I do think there's definitely an emotional weight that was carried with our daughter deciding to stay at home for school, like to do school virtually, and the blessings of where we live and how much space we have, and the quality of the outdoors is what Dale is speaking to. And I think when we focused pretty deliberately, I would say for the most of the year, to focus on the opportunity that the time together without a lot of the noise of seeing friends and seeing other family members in person, that quiet togetherness. I think we really made the best of that and got a lot from it. I feel like we learned more about each other. And I think we grew in more tolerance with each other. And for me personally, I would say I look more recently, I think with the talk of the reopening or back to work or what's happening next, sometimes takes me out of the present moment. And that's when I feel anxious, or that's when I'm, a little bit heavier or stressed out or worried. My fuse is shorter. There's so much going on in the world that is heavy that when I come out of the moment of what's right in front of me, it can be very overwhelming. And I would say that's very much when I'm feeling what a lot of people talk about carrying. So this present moment, and it's not only this book, but there are all kinds of writings and all kinds of techniques and tips, but staying present for me has been a lifesaver to the pandemic, to the COVID time, not only in the past year, but I find even more so going forward.
Yeah. Thank you both.
She's so smart.
Well, I found your book, not just because we're talking about it tonight. Every now and then when I would feel heavy, I would pick it up and that's when I would randomly choose a page, and it always something would resonate. So thank you for having it out in the world during this.
We did it at the same time.
I see the clock behind me. We're very close to 9, and there's
Yes.
a comment from Barb who just says, thank you for talking about your book, which she looks forward to reading, and welcome to Muskoka. So thank you for that, Barb.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Barb.
We do have a question, and I was hoping, Dale, to get you to read your selected entry, but we'll see how you go with the question first. Which Cheryl says, how are you promoting the book besides events like this? She just had her first book published, but with COVID, it has stopped all the plans for personal appearances and forced all promotions to be virtual now, which she finds to be a problem.
Right.
So you would have had a little bit of time in the regular world of promotion before things changed. Do you have any tips for Cheryl?
Sure, absolutely. I think, Cheryl, what we found, especially with our book, because our book didn't fit neatly into the general way that books are promoted. It became a very difficult book to describe in your typical news cycle or your typical day show or talk show. So what we found really worked was online communities. So book clubs, anywhere where people are talking about books in a passionate way, those became great places for us to talk about our book as well. We worked with a couple of great book promoters. Is it NN Light?
That's right.
Yeah, so there's an Canadian online book promoter who's a real agent of Canadian authors. I don't mean agent literally, but just advocate maybe. Yeah. And her name's NN Light. And I would say she was amazing for us because she spread the word on social media about the book. She ran contests. We also had a person in the States out of Florida called Carly Ray, who's a book reviewer on Instagram, and she loved our book. So she was really helpful and supportive in arranging giveaways and promotions and things like that. And really, it's as a first-time author, one of the things that the publishing companies, I think, especially the larger publishing companies, maybe miss as an opportunity is helping authors promote themselves. Because as a first-time author, unless you're writing a hugely topical book that's newsworthy or timely, it's really on you to promote your own book. And as an author, sometimes we believe that once we finish writing the book and we finish editing it and it's on a bookshelf, we feel our job is done. But in effect, your job is just beginning, because now your book is out there with millions of other books, and you have to promote it.
Thank you, and hopefully,
Also,
Cheryl,
you're welcome.
something out of that.
You're welcome.
Was just
Sorry.
gesturing at the clock here.
Yep.
In advance of doing these talks, I always feel that I'm never going to be able to have enough questions to fill an hour, and this just flew by. So thank you, Dale and Kim. There's been some lovely comments pop up in the chat about how much people are appreciating being able to listen to authors talk. And I would like to think that once we're back out in a so-called normal environment, we'll be able to continue this, because it's a way of bringing all of our libraries together, which I think has been really fantastic. So just want to thank everyone. We are at 9 o'clock for being with us tonight. And once again, congratulations on seeing your hard work in print out in the world. Anybody who hasn't got the book yet, you can still order a copy from your local library. Give us a call, give us an email before the end of day tomorrow. Keep an eye on your inbox for more events like this and things that your libraries are offering to you. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you,
Lindsay.
everyone, for being with us.
Absolutely.